Professor, all the participants, part of the pre-platinum Jubilee CME. In fact, it is always a privilege to me. I come at the first and I welcome you all. Today we have got a very interesting talk organized by the Department of Psychiatry as part of the pre-platinum Jubilee CME, the mental health in COVID-19. It is going to give definitely a lot of interest among all the participants. This much I can say, COVID-19 has affected all aspects of humanity. Besides the physical aspect, it has tremendously impacted on the mental health. And when we talk about mental health, the man is, if he is not mentally stable, and what the COVID-19 has put in is a panic. People have really damaged themselves because of the fear. Besides losing the job, which is again a strain, and so many variety of factors come into play as regard the sanity of the mind is concerned. I welcome you again. We have two very eminent speakers from one of them are alumni from UK, Dr. Carr, and also one of the renowned digital. I'm told that digital psychiatry. So, that is what I have been told. So let's hear to both of them. We really enjoyed the discussion. But before I conclude by welcoming, I welcome you to please participate in our Platinum Jubilee and SCBL Global Conclave. If it is physical, so far so good, please visit our website. We are having a registration very shortly. By next week, beginning of next week, we will start registering the delegates and the SCBN, whoever are coming to participate in our Platinum Jubilee and SCBN Global Conclave. But what is more important, if you are not able to come, then please join. Everything will be live stream. The link will be provided through our website, both SCB website and SCBN website. So please log in and participate and become part of the jubilation. Thanks to all of you. I welcome you again. Since I'm outside Cuttack and I will be out of the link, I request Professor Gita Sahu to take over after this, and she conducts the meeting. As of now, I hand over to our moderator, Professor Sarda Swai, to continue the proceeding. Thank you.
Thank you, respected Dean and Principal. Thank you, sir. On behalf of SCB Medical College, I first welcome all the participants, all my colleagues, all my senior colleagues, junior colleagues, all the friends, those who are participating in the pre-platinum Jubilee CME. This is a great moment for all of us because this year, simultaneously, we are observing the 75th year of our SCB Medical College, and it is coinciding with 75 years of independence. Very great moment for all of us. And today we have two renowned speakers. First, Professor Prabhat Chand, who I think Professor Prabhat Chand does not need any introduction in front of the mental health professionals. I cannot forget the contribution of Professor Prabhat towards the Mental Health Institute Center of Excellency for establishment of Odisha Digital Academy of Mental Health, which is a newer project and one of the ambitious project of Government of Odisha for providing tele-mental health service for research, training, treatment for the mentally ill people and training of all the mental health professionals, including psychiatrists, clinical psychologists, psychiatrists, social workers. Very few things I will tell about Prabhat, who has done his fellowship in the public health, in the telehealth for addiction, in the Eco Institute of University of New Mexico, Albuquerque, USA. After that, he has a pioneering role in establishing the NIMHANS Digital Academy, Virtual Knowledge Network Eco Hub, for which he has been awarded by Government of India in many spheres and many times. And for information of all the listeners, Professor Prabhat has established the NIMHANS Digital Academy Hub in collaborating with many states, including Gujarat, Odisha, Chhattisgarh, and other states. And since 2014, 6,000 doctors, counselors, nurses, educators are already trained. And today he will tell about a particular topic, that means in the mental health during COVID-19, how the digital mental health has provided the service during COVID-19 when everything was neglected and people have well felt the value of mental health during COVID-19, because COVID-19 has exposed the balance between physical health and mental health, for which every researcher, every policymaker, administrator, everyone has talked about. How NIMHANS has given the mental health service, and also in Odisha, we have also provided. Our second speaker is Dr. Nilmadhav Kaur, who is a great researcher, who is a son of the soil. He is a MD Psychiatry from Mental Health Institute in the year 1996. After that, he was a member, he was assistant professor in the Kasturba Medical College, and after that, he has just doing his practice in UK since 2004, and he has very much contribution for the research activities of Mental Health Institute. He has every help to all our postgraduate trainees and in all research spheres. I will tell, even by staying at UK, he has provided the mental health services by helping in the research of the mental health. So now I will just welcome Professor Prabhat to start his speech.
I think, sorry. Thank you, Dr. Hotha, Principal, and thanks, Sarda. And it's actually very anxiety-provoking to talk in front of many people who are from SCB and other part of the country, settled in other part of the country. So I thought, I'll start with a small quiz to know that whether, how many are actually awake in the Zoom. Zoom is one of the most, difficult platform now. It's, whenever people come in front of Zoom, you start worrying and, how to sustain attention. So I'll have a quick quiz now, and 1 minute I will take, not more than that. Yeah. Now, what you do, you take your phone out, you take your phone and you type slido.com. It's a completely anonymous quiz. So, not a quiz, basically, questions. So you just tell me now, how are you feeling? How are you feeling now? So 1 to 7. So code is SCB. There is there in the screen. Type slido.com. No need to download any app. Just browser. Code is SCB. How are you feeling now? It's completely anonymous. So no worry about your names. No need to enter any names. Only one vote. That's interesting. So I probably send a chat also if you want. I can send a chat. Did you get it? Yeah, that's good. Somebody's honest. So 7 means you're feeling very good. 1 means you're miserable. You just don't want to see the Zoom at all. Okay. So we have 12 votes and rating is 5.5. Yeah, 5.4. That's good. That's good. So if you fall below 5, we'll stop today's program because nobody is happy today. If you cross above 5, then we'll continue the program. So 5.4 is pretty margin. We have 27 votes, 28. That's good. So 5.4. Okay, let's look. Make it 30, 1 vote extra, so that at least 1/3 of voting has happened. No problem, it's fine. Okay. Let's have one more and then we'll go to topic. If you could eat only one food in the rest of your life, only one food is allowed to eat, which one you like? You can type here. One food rest of your life. Okay. You know the option, only one food rest of your life, which one you will try? Okay, 4 votes. Yeah, that's good. Not. Yeah. So one food. Rice looks, most prominent. The more the bold, more prominent the food is. So at this point of time, obviously rice looks. Chapati is also prominent. That's good. That's good. So, okay. We'll wait till next to 3 seconds or 4 seconds. We'll go ahead then. So rice, fruits, roti, biryani. Oh. It's a nice pick of mango. That's good. That's good. Okay, right. So rice looks like the winner at this point of time. Then roti, biryani, fruits, and yeah, biryani, two biryani has come. That's good. That's good. Last one. You are given 1 hour extra in life in a day. What is that you are going to do now? You are given 1 hour extra. All of us given 1 hour extra time. How will you use the 1 hour extra? That's lovely. Sleep. Okay. One hour extra. Sleep is most prominent. Many people love to sleep, exercise, reading, and enjoyment. So these 2 things, but there are many ways. Review a manuscript, there must be a PG student. So, or somebody like me who is a researcher and complete pressure to publish paper. Okay, that's good. That's good. Netflix, that's nice. So, Sarada, if I ask you 1 hour extra, you get, what will you going to do? You can unmute, your mic is muted. As a head of the department.
If I'll get 1 hour extra, if you ask me personally, I'll do gardening in my own house. And if
Excellent.
1 hour extra in my hospital, I'll do my administrative work.
Okay, that's nice. Okay, so let's. So I think sleep looks like everybody likes to have a little more sleep at this point of time. Thank you very much. Probably let me go to the presentation and I'll take 15-minute time as I promised. Just a minute, 2-minute time. Thank you very much for lovely participation. I thought, Okay, just a minute. Give a minute time just to set it up. Is my screen visible or any problem you're facing? Oh, I think no, it's not. It's not. It has to be like here. Yeah. You should all right, correct? No, now it's supposed to be visible.
Now it's okay.
Okay. Okay, so I have my topic is on digital mental health at the time of COVID. So what I've tried to divide in 2 parts. The first part I'll talk about patient, including person. It's not just patient, it's person also. So I will talk about many of us fluctuate between patient and person. So you have own mental health issues, your own physical health issues. I will talk briefly about the building capacity, which is also equally important as working in an institute. I will not talk much about teleconsultation, but all of us are doing teleconsultation. I will not talk much. On the left side, I will probably briefly touch about the collaboration with the SC Medical College Cuttack, and which probably Sarada spoke very briefly at the beginning, and how it's actually helped in COVID-19 to establish and help the community. Okay, let's come back to the first one. So let me, it's big one, so please bear with me. Just what I'll do, I probably skip it here. Okay, now if you look at as an individual perspective, sorry, we have physical health and emotional health. Now, physical health, the pic I showed there is actually from the Apple Watch. If you're using Apple Watch, many of you must be using, or any of these Fitbit or trackers. You can track your energy level, you can track your sleep level, steps, HRV, heart rate variability, and many things. So this is one of the digital tool where you can track the physical health. I'll just end with one study that has what they've done recently and very interesting one. This study has looked at HRV. HRV stands for heart rate variability. At the time of COVID, they found that if you track the HRV from the Apple Watch of a group of people, you can actually diagnose and identify COVID-19 symptoms prior you getting tested done. So this is published in 2021. So a digital watch can give the data, enough data about linked to heart rate variability. Those who are not familiar with heart rate variability is indicator for cardiovascular health, indicator for stress level, and many of the softwares that were using by all this health tracker normally tracks heart rate variability. So this study tells that by heart rate variability, one can actually tell the COVID-19 related symptoms before even you get tested done. Amazing, don't you think so? I mean, you can get such early. Okay, now I'll stop here and coming to the mental health part, which I think in this section I'll talk about the apps, which has been a very important part. Let me give me time. Now, what are the opportunity that digital health or mental health has actually brought to us? Look at the opportunities here. Now, at this point of time, smartphone is ubiquitous. I am pretty sure all you joined here must have a good quality smartphone. There are more than 10,000 apps available in the Play Store on mental health. It helps us to self-management about our own health, own mental health. They're cost-effective, ubiquitous, no stigma. Somebody comes to me as a psychiatrist, you might have a lot of stigma. But when you do as a self-mental health through your mobile app, there's no stigma. And the reach is very wide. Anybody can have access to that. So this is opportunity that creates, specifically in COVID time where people have many isolation. Now look at data, just emerging data in COVID-19. What happened that this is a very recent study that has mentioned that Dr. Kar will mention in detail about this whole part. I'll just briefly touch on this. 8 out of 10 reported pandemic as a significant stress. Depressive symptoms increased by 3 times. Increase in anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, substance use. I'll come back and discuss a case that yesterday we had on PTSD for a gentleman who had COVID. Over 10% considered suicide in last 30 days, and the fear of contracting virus is something, and there are also job loss and remote education for children. And for us all, need to balance between on-site and online work. So this is how COVID-19 has brought to us. Now coming to the few of the apps that has been popular. So I'm talking about the mobile apps, which has been studied well and been pretty popular in the Play Store. So there broadly in mental health, there are 3-4 apps. Brain training, actually it focuses on how to increase your concentration, how to increase attention span, executive functions. Then another app is about meditations. Again, there are 4 apps that have studied recently for COVID-19. Now these apps are there before COVID-19 also. Headspace, Calm, Smiling Mind, Aura. Headspace is one of the very leading app that follow Zen method of meditation. 26 million downloads. The right side in the green color is the number of percentage of increase of downloads in the time of COVID. So you can see all has jumped 14% more, 31%, 61%, and 28%. Now each app has substantial percentage download in the COVID time. At least this is about the mid-COVID, May 2021, the data has come up. Now let's come to the mood tracker. We'll close it. Let's come to mood tracker. I think we have 2 prominent one, Daylio and Pacifica. Now data is available for Daylio, which we know is 17% increase in the COVID time. Now this is interesting. So if you look at CBT per se, actually decrease. So Happify and Talkspace are cognitive behavioral therapy based app, mobile app, but decrease in 11%. So all these apps that I spoke to you just now are well studied. I'll probably keep it again for that. And many of you might like to download in the Play Store. Some are paying, some are free, but many are free at the beginning. So this, and if you come back and look at the little more data about user activity, let's see user activity. There's increase in activity in 5 out of 8 apps. Now, this is very important. How do you know these apps are good? So there are studies available, but there are 5 parameters in which one decides whether the mobile apps are worth to use or they are like any other apps. So one is engagement, interactive, functionality, aesthetics, and information. And all these apps in this parameter has scored 4.07 out of 5, which is fairly good. Remember, many apps are commercially, available. Now, cost. So obviously, as I mentioned, 15 out of 16 that app I showed you has a commercial interest. So definitely, when you look at the data of pandemic, if there is a commercial interest, then another factor comes up with the affordability of the person to download the data. One app is from government of Australia, Smiling Mind. That's why it has the highest download, increased by 60 odd %. Okay. Now, last two part. Now look at clinical efficacy versus download. What do you think? We all will believe that if it is clinically effective, or randomized control studies has been shown that these are pretty good. So likelihood of download is very high, but in reality it is not true. So there is 9 apps which has randomized control study, but the download and usability of the app by the people is not directly related to your study. Now, again, there obviously that means there are factors like how they market it, how it's available, which Play Store is available, all play a role. Just quickly go into summary part, and then I will go to next part. And so, if you look at mobile app in the COVID time, there is substantial growth in download of mHealth app. Meditation apps are most commonly downloaded compared to cognitive behavior therapy or anxiety or mood trackers. Many apps has good functionality and aesthetics, but obviously you need to look at more studies whether post-pandemic, is these apps downloads or is this usability higher? So this is where I conclude the first part of the presentation. Then I'll go to the, just let me make it small and go to the next part. Okay. So next part I'll highlight about the capacity building. I think one thing we learned in the whole COVID is that we need to upscale our knowledge much faster. I remember how the treatment of COVID changed so fast. So the building capacity is one of the key tasks that we all have to do. And I have been involved in this process for quite some time. And that's, I think Sarada mentioned about digital academy and the whole process of how to build the capacity in mental health. We all know that if you write knowledge at right place at right time, it can save lives. And there's no second opinion about this. I think all of you know it. So what do we do at Niemann's Digital Academy Project ECHO? We follow ABCD model. We amplify the knowledge by using the digital technology. Look, I'm here at Bangalore, and you all joined from across country, and then we all are discussing and learning about something about digital health. We discuss about best practices. Now, best practices is a culmination of obviously book or evidence-based practice and the wisdom. I work as addiction psychiatrist at here. So if somebody, yesterday I was seeing a young boy who came with, who ran away from house, have come with cannabis use and got married much early in age, then again separated. So when I spent 2-3 minutes time, so you could get idea where is the problem. It's emotional difficulty. It is about the environment. It is about the personality. So best practices is a combination of knowledge and wisdom. And what we do here is the case-based learning. I'll probably show a case to you. And then in this COVID time, many new things has come up, like long COVID. I mean, many of us just don't know how to manage long COVID. So we focus on the discussion by the case, and then we have data to monitor the outcome. So in this capacity building, what we had probably this also, yeah. So this is actually a case. I thought I will probably quickly take a minute time. This happened this Saturday. This case was presented to us by remotely through a similar Zoom telehealth platform by a doctor who works very remotely in actually in Orissa. And this is a case about he complains of fatigue, low mood, worthlessness. He had been COVID positive on ventilator and he was getting very, very vivid dreams about the ventilator, on his ventilator. He's distressed by daily news on COVID-19 and death counts and thinking about the people who could not survive. As per the spouse, he's crying, anger outburst, not able to memorize, forgetting a lot of things. Remember, he's only 33, he's engineer. but he left job because he thought he cannot continue to work. So this is the case they presented. You go for the details, I'm not going to read. He had a severe COVID, he was in ICU, and there are a couple of deaths in the family, and also saw somebody, dying in that ICU. Then helplessness, worthlessness, hopelessness, many symptoms started coming. What do you think the diagnosis will be? I mean, there are many mental health professionals. What do you think the diagnosis will be? You can chat and tell me quickly, 10 seconds. What do you think diagnosis in this case? Okay. You can just chat and tell. What should be likely diagnosed in this case? Any taker? I'm not able to see chat probably. Okay. Fine. So I think this is an example where the session happens, and this is what is happening here. So I'm talking about the doctor who presented the case, and so this is a team we at Nimans, and when the doctor presented this case to us, this is new to all of us. We have never, very few of us might have seen the case where a COVID survivor having vivid dreams about the COVID and having arousal, hopelessness, helplessness, and so this case is a case of post-traumatic stress disorder. So Dr. Biswal is presenting this case to all of us and asking what I'm going to do now, because vivid dreams are something is bothering patient a lot. So these are the knowledge dissemination, because none of us treated PTSD due to COVID in the past. This is a way we all learn, we manage the case. So we send a recommendation and Dr. Biswal present the case after some time. Then it's followed by didactic. So this is how an example of a dissemination knowledge happens, new knowledge which is not available till now. Okay, so probably these are the 4 methods we follow. We follow interactive, it's mentorship, it's not just training, we mentor them, guided practice and peer learning. What is the benefit? You create champions. Another doctor who discusses the case is not a psychiatrist, not expert, might be other specialized in other field, but by this knowledge, she become expert, and she started touching the life of the people. Again, available quality care. This is very important. People speak the language who the doctors speak this, or if you're doing for nurses, you have to speak the language what they speak in local. Rapid dissemination of knowledge. There is accreditation attached to this. And the most important in the time of COVID is connectedness, joy of learning together. So that's what I thought we learn from these things. Last part of presentation, I'll talk about Odisha and I'll close after that. Just give me a minute. So now we realized that when I started this process of capacity building, we realized that one of the states which is struggling, like many states, not a single state, with less mental health professional is Odisha, and this is why we thought it. I'll just tell you the graph here. Now, if you look at data, I'm talking about addiction because this is my area. In Odisha is top 10 in alcoholic disorder at this point of in India. 9th actually. Odisha is 9th. Whole country, if you take Odisha is 9th position in use of alcohol, problem drinking. Cannabis is 3rd. That means, and this is the data that Odisha government is given to National Human Rights Commission. A little old data, it must have changed, I'm pretty sure. But look at the numbers, like the hand count numbers of people at this point of time, at least in government sector I'm talking about. This in 2016, it might have changed. So there's a significant mismatch between your resources and people need help. How such a millions of people who had substance use in the thing, and how are you going to manage them? That is where we have started collaborate with the state government of Odisha, and this is actually happened. I'll probably quickly go through. First program we did was training the doctors how they can screen alcoholic disorder in the regular practice. Remember, these doctors are not in the medical colleges, not specialists, they're just MBBS or probably MD medicine maximum. How they can decide how to give brief evidence-based counseling and who needs pharmacotherapy, provide early counseling at least and hotel management, and decide when to refer. This is an example of a session happening. So I think here you can see Dr. Sima also. So she was a co-teacher with us. Doctors will present cases to us and we'll discuss the case followed by a small didactic. This method, what happened, at least, it's little, I think last year sometime it was happened, and we have so many spokes doctors in Odisha who are actually not trained and handhold to diagnose, treat, or refer if they need for alcoholic disorder. 49 doctors and probably happened almost, if I can look at, 15 live sessions, 34 cases discussed, and they actually saw 6,000 cases. Remember, this is a very small number, but this is how you do the forced replication. The number grows as it progresses. So this has led to what you're seeing here, the sustainability of the Digital Academy of Orissa. And that's where I think, thanks to the leadership of State of Orissa and Dr. Swai and the team, I think I could see Sima sitting here and the team, and the government of Orissa, who thought of having a MOU with NIMHANS, and that's how we started. And at the COVID time, when things are not going well, and that time actually, I can show there's some photos here. This is what the Cuttack, I think Cuttack municipality most likely, has actually used this service to educate people about the COVID testing, same Digital Academy. So it actually started 2018-19 and yeah, 2020, and COVID just started. And because there is a facility available, they could use this facility, and I think now it's probably being used more commonly. Also, we had a couple of sessions for the Orissa doctors who had to educate them for themselves and for their patients about mental health and well-being of COVID. I will stop here, and last one I'll complete before I close it. So this is by Prime Minister of Canada. If we can use apps to order dinner and video chats to stay in touch with family, we can use new technology to keep each of us healthy. I think this is very true. So there is increase in virtual care, there is telemedicine, app-based care, use of artificial intelligence, bots has come up. But I'll end with a word of caution. Whenever you get into the digital health, I mean mental health also, or general health, let's make sure the safety and privacy. The care has to be personalized, not that everybody can come to telehealth and get better. There are complexity of cases, so blending or hybrid model is much better than virtual model. Address the inequities. We all know that a huge group of population who are more vulnerable, more marginalized, does not have access to the technology. One should try to address the inequities. And last and most important part, till now, all digital mental health being invested by companies, tech companies, but having an independent research like you do pharmacological trial is the need of the time to take it forward post-COVID. I think I will close here, and thank you very much for your time. So I have done not able to. So Sarda, I have done the print and done my job.
Thank you, Prabhat. Dr. Prabhat, I just please stay with us, because after Dr. Kaur's session, we'll have some questions. So thank you on behalf of SC Medical College, and it's my heartfelt thanks. What I felt from your talk, by staying in Bangalore, NIMHANS, your heart beats for people of Odisha and mental health of Odisha. Your brain always stimulates for the mental health of Odisha. Thank you for that. Now I welcome Dr. Kaur from UK, which is son of soil, from Bhubaneswar. Sir, please start your talk. Now to Dr. Nilmadhav Kaur.
Yeah. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks very much for inviting Shraddha. It's really a pleasure to be with our own people. I feel at home while talking to all the, and it's good to see that Prabhat spoke before me and highlighted what is happening in India. Wonderful things, really. I think Professor Hota, Professor Sahu, and participating, and all the participants. It's really interesting that we are doing this for the 75th anniversary of this college. A great academic initiative, I must say. Sada asked me to talk about how we sort of manage mental health in COVID in UK. So very specific topic. So I will concentrate on that. I'll share most of my personal experiences because I'm practicing here. and I'll share some of the things that happened. Okay, let me share this slide, whether can see share. Can you see my slide?
Yes, yes, yes.
Thank you. So, as you know, compared to India, UK was hit harder. We had, higher death rates here. More people in 100,000 died here than compared to India, whichever the statistics is. So we were hardest hit. I mean, the risk was high. People feared more, so it affected mental health. And when we talk about mental health, let me just highlight, it is outside Department of Psychiatry. Psychiatry department sees a very minuscule, very top end. It affects everybody. It affects community who actually do not come to doctors, don't come to the psychiatrist. And so mental health is for everybody. As you know, there's no health without mental health, and it was affected. With this COVID, which is a massive, stressful experience, and we are still going through this. So how did UK responded? That basically the topic. We started with some sort of research here. I think the response has been initially, I'll go into that, mostly in different fields like research, clinical interventions, service developments, empowering clinicians. But we all know that mental health was affected. But how was it? What is the degree of impact? Do we have core data? Do we have any research? So some research done in UK itself suggested that the mental health distress in general community increased from 18.9, there's a previous data in 18-19 to 27. So you can see that there is a gross increase. So what we felt, there is a pandemic of mental health crisis is going on. That's pretty true. A lot of people are affected. Another community cohort study using PHQ-9, PSS, GAD, very common instruments in psychiatry, found that, the usual population norms exceeded significantly, during this COVID period. That means depression, stress, and anxiety is significantly more during this period. I mean, this is no wonder. We all know that this happened. But here is sort of crude data. A meta-analysis found stress in 30%, anxiety again 30%, depression. That means already 1/3 of the population are having clinically significant, not just having anxiety or depression, clinically significant stress, anxiety, depression. And they all need help. And 33%, we will come to some data in India, but it must have been like this there. And where are they? Are they being treated? Are they being picked up? Well, it's not that everybody here has been picked up, even if or treated. But we need to see, I think we need to reflect that how can we share good practices there and here. An online survey, actually we did that here, and it actually covered many countries. And we found moderate to severe anxiety at 20%. And moderate to severe depression in 15% using this GAD and PHQ, very simple screening tools. And primary care PTSD tools said almost 34% had probable PTSD. That means stress-related disorders are really high in the community. Healthcare workers, like we all, when we responded, stress symptoms are in 1 in 5, which is clinically kind of relevant, significant. So all of us, doctors, we need to watch ourselves. Most of us, at least, a good proportion of us did feel stressed during this period to a great extent, to a clinically significant extent. Same with anxiety and depression. We've although found very less in healthcare workers. Workload in UK for mental health professionals during this period, RC Psych, Royal College of Psychiatrists did a survey. Almost half of us said, oh, workload has increased. I'll tell how it has increased when we moved to digital, mostly digital, because face-to-face was cancelled, except in inpatients and all that. And around 20% said it has decreased. Well, that's an interesting thing, isn't it? How it has actually decreased when a stressful thing going on. Local experience, which is like in, say, my trust, my area where I work in Wolverhampton is in Midlands near Birmingham. We all felt there is increased crisis contact. Like people can contact a crisis number for their mental health issues, and it has massively increased. In our community psychiatric teams, the duty phone just continuously was ringing. So a lot of people did phone or increase their contact to us. Referral from general practitioners, here, if there is a person with problem, mental health problem, GPs, general practitioner pick up, and then they refer to us. So those referrals also went up. And the caseload, obviously, in the psychiatric department increased. Mine has almost doubled in this last 1.5 years. That was very interesting when I realized this, that why I'm so busy. I'm always there in the clinical side and not able to do anything else. What are the nature of the illnesses that increase anxiety, depression, stress symptoms? A lot of actually stress symptoms. And interesting, we did one quick audit when we found 90% of the attendants in A&E, which were referred to the mental health liaison team, which deals with, were for suicidality. They are thinking of suicide, ideas, plans, attempts, and almost 10 to 12% of them got admitted. So you can imagine during this period how much it has increased. So what was done? What is the response? I will divide it into 3 areas, mostly what the government did, what the Royal College of Psychiatrists did, and what the local health trust or the hospitals did. What are the major response areas countrywide? It was initially research. I think you all know it is a lot of epidemiological, clinical, and vaccine development research happened. So the Oxford vaccine, which was simultaneously developed in India as well. So it was available. So a lot of epidemiological and clinical studies started. That's how later in I think we have long COVID symptoms and long COVID syndrome as well. A lot of psychiatric or mental health symptoms are there. I think you will pick up, not just in psychiatry, in all the departments in the college or anywhere else. So you will see people who are having long COVID symptoms, and it will continue because research is continuing and a lot of people are still continuing to have those symptoms. Now, interestingly, some research projects which have been started has almost a long-term project, like 25 years. Some universities have, suppose people have been affected by COVID, what is happening to them? They will follow them up 25 years. If somebody has taken a vaccine, what is happening? That's for 25 years. So a lot of research emphasis has been there, how to deal with this COVID. Sharing information has been a very important thing. As you know, there are a lot of rumors, a lot of issues which was affecting mind, the mental health. So people were scared. And responsible journalism is one of the things pretty important. Giving accurate figures, facts, through media and internet, TVs, print media, everything is pretty important. And saying what is a rumor, what is not, what is a myth, what is not fact is pretty important, which was happening very regularly. Accuracy of information, again, infection, health, death, hospital admission, how many beds, all those things were also given. And I think you might have seen that Prime Minister and a head of NHS and a head of some sort of service provider were regularly giving bulletins or TV bulletin in the afternoon every day. So basically there is a kind of partnership what they did and sharing that information. So support for clinical, social, and financial needs during this time has been a major response area. So what the government did and what is specific to mental health, they brought a COVID law, and which has massive changes in how we treat psychiatric patients through Mental Health Act. I think in India also we have Mental Health Act. I think we use much less there, but here it is pretty commonly used. And so it changed to online mental health tribunals. Like you don't need to go present your case face to face with the judges and others. You can see one doctor can see and make the recommend. Previously it was two. So it made it like how we can decrease the contact. And I think it was brought very quickly. Now, obviously things have changed. So they are changing it again. It is becoming normalized. Mental health training and most trainings become online, so it was fine, digitalized, and it's continuing pretty well. And to improve the capacity, I think you must have heard about NHS Nightingale hospitals. So in various parts of the London and other parts of the whole country, they developed big hospitals, changing the stadiums and other big buildings to hospitals and taking doctors away and to improve the capacity. See, that actually reassured the public, general public, that if, and the ministers and everybody kept saying, if you are ill, you need a bed, there is a bed. So no worries about it. And that reassurance definitely helped a lot. And there is an interesting thing about furlough, like financial support for work. A lot of people got that. So that financial, if you lose job, I think that happened massively in India and here as well. So unless you support, how can you support the mental health of the person? If he has lost a job and family and all those things, it becomes difficult to fend for the family or support the family. So they continued financial support. And later, obviously, the vaccination drive. That's what government did. And vaccination being a definite way out of this pandemic reassured many people. What did Royal College of Psychiatrists did? They brought out a lot of guidance pretty quickly on digital technology and clinical consultation. How do you use, there are a lot of apps available, which is secure, which can be, confidentiality can be maintained, which is easy to use for the patient, so that you send a link into the phone, they can click and they are there with you face to face. But even in that, they found out like how much you should be showing, your face should be showing, whether it should be lighted enough. Very detailed things come up. And I think Prabhat did mention about the confidentiality issues, which is still a concern when you do that remote, and that needs to be handled. So all those things. They also brought up well-being and support for doctors, for staff and their colleagues. I think all my brothers and sisters there, I think we all need to take care of our mental health during this stressful period. Sometimes we are stressed, we do not know. I think I always salute, people there in the sense, the kind of service, the amount of service, the amount of number of patients they are giving, seeing, and then service they are giving is much higher. And, and obviously it is a stressful job during this pandemic, and a lot of changes happen. So take care of yourself. I think there are apps already mentioned, yoga, meditation, they do help, but taking care of oneself, having coping strategies is really helpful for mental health. RCSI guidance also covered patient engagement, a lot of legal issues, PPE. I think we had an issue in the beginning of the pandemic. What kind of PPE should be wear and what should be available. So that was interesting, including for trainees, what trainees can or cannot do. Now coming to the trust or the local hospitals, mental health hospitals or services, how they manage. Very quickly, we went to this digitalizer, the face-to-face. I think in India also that happened. It became all the appointments continued over telephone or a video consultation. Very rarely when there is a need, we did have face-to-face or we did home visit, but it was with all the restrictions. So because many people do use here telephone and all that, smartphones, so it was possible. But then there was a small proportion of people who didn't have that. And it was very difficult, or we had a landline at least to connect. When I see that, this kind of resources are not there for many of our mental health patients in India. And I think we need to think how we can help them, get into the digitalized world. I do see a lot of or support a lot of people in villages. So I ring them, I talk to them, but many times if they don't have like newer gadgets, WhatsApp or videos calling, it is coming down to best to phone. then how to get a prescription to them, how to get it sorted, it becomes very difficult. Here, what happened, online prescription was already there. So we can see the patient, talk to the or GP about, or inform the GP about the medications. GP can write the prescriptions. Pharmacists can deliver the tablets or the medicines to the person's door. And there are a lot of volunteers who actually did that job as well, taking not only medicines, but other day-to-day essentials for older adults or who couldn't go out. So a lot of things happened. So kind of the system maintained, it picked up. Some of our trainees went to these general hospitals, but I think it was not a difficult thing to do and to support general hospitals. So workforce did come down, but it was okay, manageable. Physical health monitoring for the psychiatric patients, the routine ones definitely decreased, but now it has picked up. Okay, his guidance for visitors to inpatient obviously changed. We didn't allow, I think same thing happened in India as well. And a lot of meetings were held online. So, and our training resumed online straight away. So I think we continued as in the mental health, or all the medical training continued. And the other services which supported mental health in the community were trace and test services. Suppose you get COVID, a trace and test service will contact you, and they talk for almost 30-40 minutes, giving information, the support available. I think that was reassuring. I have been called because somebody in my family got COVID. So they reassure you thoroughly, give all the information, and that is pretty helpful. They in fact said it will be a 45 minutes phone call, but it ended up almost 1.5 hours. In fact, in spite of me knowing a lot of things about COVID, they did provide a lot of things. There's a direct line of 111, which people can get consultations. Obviously, 999 facilities are here. And the voluntary sector, which is like NGOs here, helped a lot during this time. Samaritans, who takes care of a lot of people in crisis, distress, suicidal, they took a lot of calls and managed. And professional societies, information pages, like Royal College of Psychiatrists, or any, or infection controls and all that. So a lot of information were given that helped. Volunteerism was actually promoted. A lot of, government asked for people to volunteer to support older people or patients or mentally ill patients, or to take their, medications and to be there. Or so a lot of people actually joined. Almost many times that they expected joined. And the journalism and the media has been pretty responsive. They were trying to portray what was accurate. That was pretty reassuring to the people, which is not happening in many parts of the world. Now, providing hope. We're still talking about mental health, and it came from the Queen. She did talk on TV and said better days will return, and we'll be with our friends again. We will meet again. This is during the lockdown period. And coming from Queen, I think here in this country, they honor her really, really well. And so that was that had a very, very good impact. I think reassuring general public improves that, improves their they feel comfortable. Obviously, they feel reassured, and that might help their mental health. And I wanted to quote this, Sir Tom Murray. I think you might have heard. He's a 100-year-old who actually walked 100 laps in his garden and raised almost 33 million. All went to NHS charities. And he said, tomorrow will be a good day. In one of the interviews, he died of COVID after a few days of doing that. There is a cautious optimism in the air now in UK. We are definitely having a higher kind of caseload, a higher, a volume of referrals, and it will continue. It will continue in mental health. And what I want to highlight, it's not just in psychiatric departments. You can see the stress and other things in the patients attending any department. And that might be actually affecting negatively their prognosis of their physical illnesses. So I think we need to, I think all the people attending here may not be in psychiatry. So it is a message that, please see that, if your patient is stressed beyond, than their physical illness that they have. The future looks like we need increase, we will have increased psychiatric morbidity in the community, which will continue for some time, because beside the risk of infection and death, now secondary stresses of job loss, bereavements, and other things will come up. We will continue, and that will continue to affect us in a long time. And the services need to be prepared, not just mental health services, all the services, to need to be. And I think we need to train. I think Prabhat and team are doing a wonderful job in where there are no psychiatrists. If they can support somebody for their mental health, that's the wonderful thing. And we don't have enough psychiatrists anywhere. And more research are required. There is no doubt about that. And we need really groundbreaking research in the sense what will help in these long-term effects of COVID or PTSDs, which will continue, what we can give. Just giving tablets will not help. There are a lot of needs for other ways of supporting people's mental health, and the effect, because the effect is going to continue for a while. Thanks very much. I will, if there is a discussion, I am happy to answer a few questions.
Now the topic is open for discussion. Anybody can ask any question to both the speakers.
I think if there is a silence, it is really nice to, that people are really thinking during this silent periods. I can see Jayant, so really nice. So may I ask the question, like, what are we doing in other departments in the liaison psychiatry when we have people in cardiology or medicine that we know they are worried, they are stressed, and that is affecting their prognosis of their physical illnesses? Are we developing something to support them? Oh, I think you asked me the question, or I.
Can I come in, Sharda?
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah, actually, it's a pleasure listening Nilamadhav bhai so long after, and both the presentation has been so well and informative that though we are not from the same specialty, we have enjoyed this hour very much. So I thank our Dean sir and the committee of the Platinum Jubilee celebration for this series of pre-platinum CME, which is connecting us to so many people around the world. Second thing, my question to Professor Kar, I know how much he is professionally devoted and working for the science. COVID has put a real stress on patients and also healthcare professionals. In last 1.5 years, I have seen many doctors, many paramedical workers, especially nursing sisters, and those who are frontline in COVID in a burnt out syndrome. So they have been fatigued, not meeting family, and they have been forced to tear, and somewhat all our psychological advice and even medications have not helped. And then those, especially those who have lost people at a younger age, and they have become victim of the COVID. It has become really challenging. And in other side, many patients with minimal features of cough, cold, and a COVID positive report have become so panic. They've run to us in the middle of the night because the disease has such a variant spectrum. Somebody without symptom recovers, somebody with minimal symptom goes to cytokine storm and lost life. And years of lockdown, years of shutdown, and then total the impact is more mental, more psychological. And in post-COVID, I have found most of my patient 70-80% psychological presentation and 15-20% physical disability. So in that situation, I need guidance of Dr. Prabhat and Dr. Professor Kar, both for the physicians and the COVID caregivers, for their family, for themselves, and also for the patients they come across.
Prabhat first.
Thanks, Dr. Jan. I think this is Parvaji Visu. I mean, this is, I don't think it is everywhere. I mean, it's everywhere. When it happened in Nimans, getting a resident to come to work, it's a big thing. I mean, Nimans is 100 residents, 100 MD psychiatry, I mean, around 40 DM staff and all. So now there's so much panic in the residents itself. Some come to transfer to faculties, faculty, junior residents, senior resident faculty, other things. So I think what I can do, what our leadership took here, that time, Dr. Pratima, who is my mentor, was head. I mean, she took the first step. I mean, she just called many meetings of junior residents. She went to the wards with PPE. Probably I realized that when the leaders take the step, the work become, flexibility, a lot of flexibility is given to the, I'm talking about nurses, residents, some degree of, rigid plan was decreased. The workplace intervention actually helped a lot to stabilize, them, because sometimes many of our colleagues spend hours together in work. That's how half life goes. More than 70%, 5% life goes in hospitals and students and all. So that I realized helped a lot. Having the good leadership, many become empathetic, having accurate empathy. And I remember, so those are the few steps probably. As a physician, I think you are uniquely placed, sir. I mean, nobody come to me to psychiatrists to come to Nimans to suffer COVID. No way, it's a lot of stigma. So I think you are the best and uniquely placed to ask at least few things like, how is your mood, how things along with the medical complications, how things are going on around you, how happy you are, these things are under control. So some open-ended questions opens it up, and then it gives you idea that whether this is a situational adjustment or little severity index. So this is how I think. But as I told sir, that no, everybody is learning. So I was telling the case I discussed yesterday. I is learning for me. I mean, post-traumatic stress disorder, I am treated by a GP at place in Odisha was amazing. I mean, so to see it. So I think asking question, opening the channels up, these things, solution are not immediate, may take your own time to come. But that's my thoughts, sir. And I don't have. And if there is syndromal, probably ping to your colleagues and decide anything pharmacological they given. But non-pharmacological definitely plays a great role also. Sir, over to you.
Thank you very much, Prabhat. Just I think I'll give you two very practical tips. Actually, we are doing that here. All the care clinicians are affected. They have taken very difficult decisions. They have worked in stressful scenarios with COVID patients, knowing that they have to return to family of their own. Now, group sessions, like as a team, say we have units. Suppose a unit had professor and the team associate professors or assistant professors and all the members, nursing staff together, if they meet for 5 minutes, 10 minutes in the morning or at the end of work, saying how are we doing today or how we did today, how everybody is doing. There is a mindfulness we can practice. Okay, there are many things available and a lot of people actually connecting, having a bit of compassion, meeting together. That will help. Most of the time, as we work, but we don't actually interact as teams. So having a little bit of time, and that will help everybody. It may be the junior most nurse will pick up that how things are, how the professor has been most irritating today. Okay, but in this sense, in a very positive way, and things can actually roll out gradually when we do mindfulness is one of the suggestions. The other thing is having a buddy system, or somebody can ask another colleague, how was your day today when going home? Has it been all okay? Do you want to share anything? A bit of communication beyond clinical things and human person-to-person communication will help a lot. Actually, I can share it with you. Like here, they have recently started like these 3 things that you ask to support trainees. And many times trainees go home seen something very grotesque happening in the clinical sense, and they are very traumatized. We don't ask them, we don't deal with we should actually, isn't it? So basically talking to colleagues will help. And this is a team effort. Having a tea together at the end and discussing few things might be fine. You may not have that much of time, but you can start with 5 minutes. So a team thing, and then one-to-one thing like finding out how one is might help. Beyond that, I think Prabhat explained, if somebody is emotionally that distressed, obviously that needs to be looked into. And as I mentioned, a lot of people are clinicians are clinically depressed, clinically stressed, having PTSD symptoms. So they need support. So, but for a general well-being of the team to perform better, we need this support. And no doubt, this is a stress which is going on.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that formula, the mindfulness and sharing our own experience. Actually, that really helps. Just you have to find out the time, and especially thanks to Prabhat for the high-tech slides and the technologically a very superb presentation with a feedback from all of us regarding the challenges that we face every day. Thank you. Very successful pre-platinum CME by Department of Psychiatry. Thank you, everyone.
Sada sir, should I come in?
Madam, please, you will take only one question by Professor Misra.
Yes, sure.
Okay. Hi, Prabhat, Nilamadav. How are you? It's not a
Thanks.
question. Again, it's not a question. Rather, it is maybe personal advice. Actually, I was a victim of COVID in September 2020, and I am going to complete 1 year next month. So my concern is rather how late this. Of course, this is a physical question. Any physician can answer. How late we can expect the fatality of the disease itself, or is it an end to my panicky about my future, all these hazardous things that may come in the way? Not psychiatry, anything not psychiatry. It's only physical. You can share because you are in a top institute. You can share if you are looking after all these things.
Professor Prabhat, please answer.
No, probably I'm not the best person to answer this question because obviously it's related to the long-term complication of the COVID and how it progresses over the time. I think Dr. Karan did mention about the longitudinal studies still going on. Nobody knows. I think probably somebody wiser than me might be there, but my experiences are very limited because this issue. Apologies that I'm probably not the best person to answer the question, sir. But thank you.
No problem.
Dr. Kaur.
I think my suggestion would be we have to keep a watch on what's coming up, because a lot of studies are still going, and it is not just affecting, it's affecting various parts, isn't it? Not just one part. COVID is becoming almost all system, kind of disease affecting everything, and how long its impact lasts, pretty difficult at the moment. So you have to be watchful about what's coming up.
Now,
Can I come in? Can I come in?
Okay.
Yeah, actually, by definition, post-COVID and the related complications were for 3 months, and now they have extended it to 1 year. So it may be mental, maybe related to endocrine, GI, or CNS, the symptoms are stretched to 1 year, and it all depends on the severity of the disease. So you had mild, moderate, or severe disease, how long you stayed in the ICU, whether you required ventilatory support, NIV for a long time, and what was the physical amount of stress during the disease. It determines the post-COVID course. And we have prolonged course. Almost we have seen people who have more than 1 year post-COVID and still continue to be symptomatic. So as Professor Kaur has told, we have to follow up and take a call, and these are all in a evolving state.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now I request Professor Mishra to give vote of thanks, and lastly we'll go to Professor Sahu to conclude the session. Sir, please give vote of thanks to our both renowned speakers who have enlightened with so much of knowledge on COVID-19 and mental health. And then we'll go to Professor Gita Sahu. Sir.
Okay. Thank you, sir. On behalf of Department of Psychiatry, SCV Medical College, Cuttack, I would like to extend our sincere thanks to our revered Dean and Principal, Professor Dr. Datiswar Gota, who, in spite of his busy schedule and while traveling in the car, also he could help us and give some inspiring knowledge and contribution. And he's such a leader, I know, because so many of my contemporaneity might be knowing all these things. He was at that time president of our student union at that time, after emergency was over in probably 77, late 70s. And he was such a bright person. And I once again thank him. And it will be my privilege to thank both the persons who are the very good persons, and they have not forgotten Odisha. They are patriotic rather, patriotic persons. Both of them I know. And Professor Prabhat Chand, Dr. Nilamadavkar, and somebody is staying 2,000 kilometers away from us. Somebody is staying 7,000 kilometers of us. They have not forgotten us. And this is a great moment to listen to them over these things. And they are continuously in touch with us. And I feel heavenly for these people. And do all the best to these people. And last but not the least, I would like to extend thanks to all the senior faculties, junior faculties, students, and all others, those who are involved in these sessions. Thank you once again to all.
Thank you, sir. Now we'll go to Professor Gita Sahu for the concluding remark for the pre-platinum jubilee CME.
Yeah, thank you, Shraddha sir. A very good afternoon. A very good evening. It's become evening now. So very good evening to Professor Prabhat Chand, Dr. Nina Madhavakar, our Professor S.P. Swani sir, and all esteemed faculties and students, residents who have joined today. Actually, we are really privileged to hear from you both.
Your voice is less audible.
Sir?
Your voice is less audible, please.
Okay. Am I audible now, sir?
Yes, now audible.
So we are really privileged today to hear from all both the esteemed speakers, Dr. Prabhat Chand sir, Nilavadavkar sir, and thanks to our Professor S.P. Swani sir that he had invited both of you today. It was really our pleasure. Like most of us will agree with most of the faculty will agree with me that digital mental health, there are so many sites and so many things to venture. At least I didn't have any idea about that. I'll try those whenever required, and we would also suggest to all others who sometimes come to us for some advice regarding any kind of depression or mood instabilities, etc. So that was a very enlightening thing that Chand sir today told about to us, and his digital voting was also really very, very nice. It was a different experience. So thanks a lot. And also Nilamadhav sir, today he told about this COVID pandemic, mental health and all. So actually in our morgue also we had done a small study of some 3 months about the fatalities during the COVID lockdown period. Like how it affected the suicides, homicides and accidental deaths and all that. So basically we also found that accidents decrease a lot. About 1/3 of accidental deaths decrease, but suicidal deaths increase during that period. That was something increase about some 20%. We compared of those 3 months of the previous year and the first lockdown period. So there was clearly an increase of suicides and also a little bit of increase of homicides. And when we went through the history from those people, mostly we found the reasons to be financial crunch and marital disharmony in many of them. And some of course told vaguely that we are not sure, kind of. But as you told, sir, it is really very much a period where every person, not only doctors, common men, everyone needs some kind of advice on mental health. So this was a very nice topic to be discussed today. We are really privileged to hear from you, sir, both of you. So thank you, all our speakers and Professor Sadler, sir, and all the faculties. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Lastly, my heartfelt thanks to all the participants, Professor Ponda, Professor Sahu, and Professor Misra, and sincere thanks, Prabhat, from a long distance. We are very happy. We'll end the session now. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Bye bye from all of us in the months.